Hi, I'm Joe Polizzi, and this is the Content Inc. podcast. 5 minutes every Monday for content creators who desire to be content entrepreneurs. This podcast is supported by Memberful. With Memberful, there is an easier way to sell subscription memberships to your audience, unlocking a new source of revenue so you can build that financially independent content business you've always wanted. It's too easy. Integrates with all the tools you currently use, including your own branding, your gated content, private podcasts, and you can even include membership tiers and community spaces. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of control over your audience data. So guess what? Memberful gives you just that. Get started for free at memberful.com/contentinc. That's memberful.com/contentinc. Hey gang, I hope you're doing well. So this is a special episode. I did a presentation for Lulu last week, and it was called How to Create a Multi-Million-Dollar Business from Your Business Book. I speak for about 40 minutes. I go through the Content Inc. model, and I wanted to share this with you. So it's not your normal 5 minutes, but I thought it was really valuable. So I thought, hey, why not put it on the Content Inc. podcast? So without further ado, here you go. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get the most possible out of it. And on with the show. Chelsea, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone started with a smile now and we can move forward. But no, I really appreciate being here. This is my favorite topic to talk about. I'm going to talk for the next 40 minutes or so. My job is to be as helpful as I can to you, make this as educational, have you get something out of it as we go. And that's what this slide is for. What's that one thing that you can take from this presentation and enact it as part of your strategy moving forward? Some of these things, I don't know exactly where. We have a big audience today. That's wonderful. You're all at different places in your content entrepreneurial journey. So whatever the stage is, and I'm going to be talking about 7 of these stages moving forward on taking your book, or some of you are not yet authors. Maybe you have a podcast or a blog or a YouTube series or TikTok or whatever. Take that thing and turn that into a content business. And that's what we're going to talk about today moving forward. So I started writing my first book, Get Content, Get Customers, there, the one shown on the left side, in 2007 with my friend Newt Barrett. And that became the building block for what I'm going to talk about the rest of the session. Now, that book, Get Content, Get Customers, morphed into Content Inc., which is the most recent. That's the 2021 version. And a lot of that is going to be talked about today. So if you really love this webinar, this is exactly what you need. Go get Content Inc., not Get Content, Get Customers. I talk about MySpace, I think, in there, and Google Plus, and things that aren't around anymore. So we've updated it to Content Inc. moving forward. But the book it's interesting. So here's what I learned. This is in 2007 to 2009 period. Here's what I learned is that those people that I looked up to with business books, they basically took that book, they created a speaking business, they wrote more books, and they did consulting. There's nothing wrong with that model. I would say 95% of business book authors do that and make a living at it. The problem is it's always time for dollars. They don't make as much on the books. They're making more on speaking and consulting, but they're always working and they never build an asset. And during those years when I was doing that, I was doing speaking and I was writing more books and consulting. I was like, I want to build something. I want to create some generational wealth here. I actually want to create a multi-million-dollar business so I don't have to work the rest of my life. Is that a possibility? So that's what I kept thinking about. And those are the case studies I started to look at to see if this was actually possible. From that became this model. Through Content Inc., the books, I've done 2 versions of those books. I probably interviewed over 500 content creators, content entrepreneurs, and this is the model that we've kind of peeled back and figured out these are the steps that it takes to build that multi-million-dollar business off the back of a book or a content property. So if you have a book, this is great. I'm going to go through those steps. I'm going to go through each one of these steps. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the content tilt, but this is what it's going to take for you to take from your business book all the way through to this multi-million-dollar property. So Get Content, Get Customers turned into Content Marketing Institute, which my wife and I sold in 2016. And I'm going, a lot of the examples in here, I'm going to go through the processes that we made to get there, to center it around this. And just to, so when we made this transition from just the book, the speaking and the consulting to the Content Inc. model that I'm going to talk about today, you can see the performance. By 2015, we were doing almost 10 million in revenue. We were throwing almost 3 million to the bottom line. And we had a really, really nice exit in that business in 2016. And I stayed on until the end of 17 with Content Marketing Institute. And now I'm doing really, really fun things like the Tilt and CEX and working with Lulu, and things are wonderful. This is probably my fourth chapter of business as I move forward. But the model works, this building the business around the book going forward. So here's what I'm going to challenge you with first. If you're going to do this, let's think about why you're doing this thing in the first place. Begin with the end in mind. When most of the authors that I work with on this type of model, we work for, they don't think about if they want to exit, when they want to exit. They don't think about anything financially. Don't think about how, do they want their kids to take this? But these are things I want you to think about now. What's your end game? What do you really want? Do you want to retire at a certain point? Do you want to have a certain kind of business? And we're going to talk about a lot of this throughout, but I don't just want you to say, hey, you should build this multi-million-dollar business because that's the cool thing to do. It's going to take a lot of work to get there. It's a different kind of model. So I want you to think about those things. This is what I did. This is how audacious with my goal setting that I was. This is back in 2008. I wrote this down in January 2008. These are my exact words. And I always write it like the thing happened. So I said, I sold my company for $15 million in 2015. That actually didn't happen. It happened in 16. But I got up every day and I would read this. I sold my company for $15 million in 2015. I'm thinking, what do I have to do today to get there? It's a very different mentality than I'm going to write 500 words today, or I'm going to go on a book tour, or I'm going to go do this. I'm going to put up a new edition of my book, whatever. You're thinking very tactically. This is a big, hairy, audacious goal. This is a BHAG. And I want you to think about what yours is, because it's going to dictate all the decisions you make moving forward if this is what you decide to do. First one, sweet spot. Going to go through every one. So what is your sweet spot? What's the book? What's your book's sweet spot? First of all, who's your audience? Who's your specific audience? And then from that, what's the expertise that you're known for from that book that you're targeting? And then what's your audience's desire? What do they need to know? Like, so for me, and I go back to the Content Inc. book, if you will, Get Content, Get Customers. I'm thinking, okay, who's my audience? My audience are marketers. It started with all marketers, and then it went to marketers who deal with content in a company, and then it evolved to marketers that deal with content in a company, in a bigger company, an enterprise company. Now, my expertise was I understood marketing and publishing, so it was a little bit different. That's what I brought to the table, because I started in 2000 in my career in B2B publishing, and then the desire. We knew that these marketers were dealing with Google and social media and all these new things. They're like, how do they begin to tell stories and not just talk about all their products and services? So they needed to understand this practice, this new thing called content marketing. So I'm like, great, that's what we're going to start with. So here's where you start thinking about these types of things more than your book, and really start to write these things down. Like, okay, who's my audience? What are their pain points? What really keeps them up at night? What are the problems that they need to fix through information, right? We are information providers for our audience. What are those types of things that I want to create? I want to find out all this research. I want to set up these listening posts. I want to listen on Twitter X, and I want to do surveys, and I want to really find this thing out. And I want to make sure I'm going to solve these things, not with a product or service ultimately, but I'm going to solve it with information. Because what you're going to do here is you're going to set up a mini media company. By the way, if you're an author, you're already a mini media company. You just aren't diversified. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you, the media company right now as you are, and we're going to diversify that to build out an asset. That's our goal with today's webinar moving forward. So very simple, sweet spot. You already have it. You already know what your sweet spot is because you've written a book, or you have a podcast, or you have something. So you already should know that. The content tilt is where almost every content entrepreneur, content creator, author falls down. And I'm going to spend most of my time right here, because if you don't get this right, It's not worth doing anything else. Sadly, we've got to figure this thing out. I'm going to share with you an example of how big companies mess this up. Let's say you wanted to create content on something like cloud computing. Great. If I go to Oracle, Amazon, Salesforce, Microsoft, IBM, and I type and I find their information on their websites about cloud computing, what do I find? It's all the same, folks. I can take the what is cloud computing from the AWS site, throw it onto the IBM site, and you will never know the difference. There's no differentiation. They have no content tilt. So what you have to figure out is if you're going to create content on a thing, it has to be different enough to cut through all the clutter. And that is your definition of a content tilt. You might call it a hook. Andrew Davis, good friend of mine, calls it a hook. Whatever that is, whatever the thing is that makes your content different, that's what we're going to lean into. There's no going broad anymore. You can't go niche enough, actually, when you think about your content niche and your audience. You want to make sure that you get to a point where you could say, hey, if we do the work, we can be the leading informational expert in this thing. Let me give you an example of how this works. Ann Reardon, author, content creator, YouTuber, she wanted to start doing food videos in 2012. Well, even in 2012 on YouTube, there were hundreds of thousands of companies doing food videos. How is Ann Reardon, with no money at all, no resources to put into this, how is she going to be better than Kraft or Nestle or some of these big companies doing this thing? So she created this brand called How to Cook That. And she did things like this, like almost create a working camera out of chocolate. Or I love this, is a 5-pound Snickers bar, which for some reason, I'm really hungry right now and I would like to eat that. So these are the things she did. But if you're like, okay, well, what's Ann's sweet spot? Ann's sweet spot is she's a food scientist in Australia. She's the baking queen of Sydney, Australia now, that they call it a food scientist. Maybe it's a dietitian. She knew about food really, really well. Her audience wanted step-by-step food recipes, but she took it one step further, because if she stopped at the sweet spot, there's no way she would break through with her messaging. So she said, if I create impossible dessert creations, which at the time nobody was doing, there was a lot of people doing it today, but nobody was doing it then, she was able to break through. Now she's a multimillionaire. She's got 5 million subscribers on YouTube. She's doing all the things, cookbooks, all wonderful, wonderful things she's doing. But it started with that content tilt, that differentiation. This is what media companies do, and they refined their tilt, their differentiation, through their content mission statement. So I'll be giving an example of that. So author, media company, publisher Darren Rouse created this site called Digital Photography School. If you go to their About Us page, you will find this wonderful, very easy to understand mission statement. And it has 3 parts. I'm going to go through these because I want you to figure out your tilt by figuring out your content mission and refining that. So Darren says, welcome to DPS, a website with simple tips to help digital camera owners get the most out of their cameras. Very easy, right? Okay. Who's the core target audience? Digital camera owners, right? Okay, great. What am I going to deliver? Simple tips, not long form content. This is 1, 2, 3 bullet point list, something very simple, short tutorials. And the most important is, what's the outcome for the audience? Helping them get the most out of their cameras. If you grew up in publishing, this is a very simple editorial mission statement. There's nothing new to it. But this is going to become the core of the thing you build that's going to bring in all this money. And that's why we want to take some time here. By the way, you're not going to get it right at first. As I said before, when I started Content Marketing Institute with my wife and a wonderful group of people, we focused on just the audience of marketing professionals. We knew that in order to survive the likes of HubSpot and other companies that were coming into our category, we had to change the audience niche a little bit, which is why we went upstream and started focusing on enterprise audiences that made all the difference for us moving forward. So this is what I want you to focus on as you go. Give you another quick example. Let's say that your audience is like, oh, I'm doing a book and it's a B2B book and it's for plant managers. Great. Not great enough. I want you to go really deep and say, oh, no. It's for plant managers at companies of 10,000 people or more who outsource parts to India and China. We always, as authors, want to go as big as we can because we think the audience will give us a better chance to sell to a larger audience. That does not work with this model. What we want to do is figure out where we can be the leading expert to the smallest group of people. And then if we have to, we go broad. Then we want to do Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans. That's where we want to start at. And then this becomes the model. And we're going to go through this the rest of the webinar. Who's your target audience? Specifically, who is that? If you're targeting everyone, you're targeting no one. Then your content tilt. So what's your differentiation? What's your hook? One content type, I'll get to this, you want to really focus on, is it audio, video, or textual content? Talk about that in a second. And then one main platform. Is it on your website? Is it a newsletter? Is it a podcast, right? So you're going to focus on those things. This is the model that we're going to make work for the rest of this. And I want to come back to this question because it's important, and people laugh at me when I say, hey, if you do this, could you be the leading informational expert in the world on your thing? And if you laugh at it, then you're probably not niche enough. Like, we want to get to a point and say, oh yeah, there's a competitive set of 5 to 7 or 10. And if we do the work, we can be the guy, the gal, the person. We can do all these things. So I want you to focus on that, because that's how you're going to break through, and you're going to be the go-to resource that sponsors are going to want to give money to. People are going to want to pay for your consulting services and your products and whatever else you launch, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Those are the first two. Again, if I have to leave you with something, it actually bothers me a little bit. I was at an event yesterday, and I was talking with a few people, and they're like, Joe, here's what I'm doing. What do you think? Everyone is the same. It's not niche enough. If you do the work, there's no way you can compete on YouTube and with the podcast with that group of people in that content niche. You don't have the resources. You don't have Amazon's $1 billion that you can promote. You have to figure out a thing. And if you do the work, that you can be the expert, just like you want to be for your business book. All right. The base is the third. So if we go back to Content Marketing Institute, we decided that our base was going to be the website or the blog. Yours may not be that. If you lean toward textual image writing, maybe it's a newsletter. If you're better on podcasting and you want that to be your thing, that could be your base. If it's on YouTube or TikTok, that's fine. Now, we'll talk about ways to create an asset from that rented land in a little bit, but we decided to focus on the blog and then the newsletter as kind of our core base moving forward. And it worked really well. So we started this. I told you I wrote the book in 2007, published in 2008. And then we built this. I started blogging on a regular basis. We renamed it to Content Marketing Institute in 2010. Took us about almost 3 years to get to 10,000 email subscribers, 4 years to get to profitability. And of course, CMI is doing really well. Their big event content marketing world is still very successful. Everything worked out well. But it was that focus to start with the first 3 to 4 years just on the blog and the newsletter. If you look at a company like Red Bull Media House, which is like the poster child for content marketing, they do all these things today. But they started with a magazine, Red Bulletin Magazine, 2005. Took them 2 years just to go to monthly. Took them 6 years to get to U.S. distribution. But they just focused on being great at one thing first. They've been around for obviously almost 20 years now. Mr. Beast, you hear about Mr. Beast, the YouTuber, all the time. They think, oh, okay, he's doing all the things. And he is doing all the things today. He's a diversified media company, but not in 2012. He started by just doing YouTube videos. He didn't get a consistent topic with his YouTube videos until 2015. Hit 30,000 subs in 16 after 4 years. So this is not a get rich quick thing. Hit his millionth subscriber in 2017. He was doing that for 5 years. So I want you to, this is what works. It's focusing on being great at one thing to start, and then you diversify. Where authors go wrong, and content creators in general, is we immediately diversify. Immediately think we've got to do all the things. And I'm here to tell you, you do not. And if you diversify too quickly, you will not be great at anything. You will be mediocre at all these things, and you won't be able to be that leading informational expert in your industry. Here's why. Regardless of the resources you have, whether you've got $1 million to start out with, or whether you don't have 2 nickels to rub together, like when my wife and I started CMI in 2007, we have a limited amount of content energy. And again, sorry, chocolate. I love chocolate. Chocolate's in all my presentations. I apologize. This is your energy. This is all the energy that you have every day to do all the things that you have to do. No more, no less. And whether you're $1 billion company or a small startup, this is all we got. This is how most authors do it. They say, oh, well, I'm going to do a blog over here. I'm going to do the podcast over here. And maybe I'll do some research, and maybe I'll do a really baddie newsletter, and maybe I'll be so-so at social, and maybe I'll try my own event, and they'll do all the things, and it gets to be too much. They can't do it. They're not great at anything. They're not building audience anywhere in particular, and they burn out after 18 months, 24 months, 2 years, or it just never starts in the first place. This is 90% of the authors that I see out here that try to do this. This is what we want. Strategy, folks, is about saying no to as many things as you can so you can say an emphatic yes to one or two things. That is strategy. So you have to think about your author strategy to become this media company, to say, okay, instead of doing all those things mediocre, I'm going to be great at doing this amazing email newsletter as my base and maybe a secondary podcast. And that's it. And if you see some of the amazing content creators out there, like your Jay Klaus, like your Justin Welsh, like your Daphne Gomez, like those that are really doing it and killing it out there, that's what they've started doing, just focusing on a couple things really, really well and saying, I don't have to be on X or Twitter. I don't have to do Facebook. I don't have to do these other things because I'm going to do these one or two things really, really well. So now you've figured out what your base is. And sometimes you might not know right away. You got to feel for it. It takes some time. Maybe you might start with a blog and then realize, no, that blog should be a newsletter, and that's where you want to go. It's okay. Give yourself some time to experiment a little bit. But now we've got to build an audience. We've got our trap to build relationships with these wonderful people that want to follow us. But now we got to build an audience. We've got to build an opt-in audience in order we can monetize this going forward. If you look at a company like the New York Times and how they went and did that, they really focused hard on email moving forward. So if you want to wonder, if you look at how did New York Times come out of just being a print publisher to being one of the dominant media players digitally, they did that through their email newsletters. And if you go, they've got, 60 or 70 of them now. And here's just some of them. And a lot of them are led by inside creators as they go, but they did so through opt-in emails as well as their digital subscriptions. And a lot of people don't realize that. So we find that as well as they're doing all the social things, but the core to New York Times really running is their email business. And it was the same for us. And this is sort of as the years go by for Content Marketing Institute, from when we started to when we sold in 2016. But I was blogging on a platform since 2007, 4 days a week, talking about the how-to of content marketing. We rebranded as Content Marketing Institute in May of 2010. We hit 10,000 subscribers, email subscribers, in the middle of 2010, 2011. Weren't doing much. That's really all we were doing. We were just focusing on that. So driving people to the website through search, and then driving people through email. And then we did all the other things. Then we launched Content Marketing World. Then we did Chief Content Officer Magazine. But we focused on the core as email so that we had some kind of control. And here's where a lot of us go wrong as authors and content creators. By the way, all these things in the subscriber hierarchy, they're all good. I mean, TikTok fans is great. You want to be amazing on Insta? Awesome. You got a YouTube following? That's great. There's nothing. But the problem is you have no control over that. Tomorrow, YouTube could decide to get rid of you, could change their algorithm. You're building audiences on what we call rented land, and it's like leasing an apartment, right? It's like you can make all the changes to your apartment that you want to all day long, but at the end of the day, the landlord could come in and say, you're done, and all those changes just help me. And that's what we do. That's how we've lifted up these, the face, whether it's Meta or ByteDance, TikTok, or all these other companies that are now multi-billion-dollar companies. They built that on the back of us. Well, if we got to do it the other way and leverage that and go up the subscriber hierarchy. So anytime you build a Facebook fan, your ultimate goal should probably be, how do I get them to sign up to my email? If I get a YouTube subscriber, great, good relationship there. How do I get them to sign up to so I have some control at the end of the day? We want to move up that hierarchy. So that means, what do you need? You need a remarkable email newsletter. And I would say for almost every successful author out there that have done what I've done, that have kind of built this multi-million-dollar business property, they have an amazing newsletter that gets you 30%, 40% plus open rate, good, solid click-through that keeps those people as loyal audience members over time that you can monetize through different ways. I shared this example about Norm Peterson and Cheers. I don't know how old you all are, but I just did a session in Social Media Marketing World, and I realized that a lot of people didn't know who Norm Peterson was or Cheers. And then I realized, okay, I've been doing this for 25 years. I need to update my examples. But anyways, for those of you that know Cheers, you have to have your newsletter just like Norm Peterson. Norm came into Cheers every day, Cheers Bar in Boston, and he always had something interesting to say, and he always showed up every day on time because he wanted that beer. So that's the key to your newsletter. You have to, so whatever you have to, if it's weekly, are you going to send out the same time, the same day, every week? I wouldn't do any less frequent than 2 times a month, like every other week. If it goes to monthly, people are going to forget and think it's spam. So I would probably say weekly or biweekly. And then other than that, I don't know. I would be concerned about that moving forward. And that's what I've done with mine. So if you go to joepalizzi.com, there's one reason why joepalizzi.com exists. It's to get or keep a subscriber. This is the homepage. That's not even the sign up page. It's like you get them onto joepalizzi.com. I want you to sign up for my newsletter where I've got it's around 50,000 subscribers or so. And it goes out every Thursday morning. So that's really what I want. If you look at Jay Klaus has Creator Science, his goes out on a weekly basis. If you go and look at Dan Runcie's great content brand Trapital, same thing, goes out every week. All the great authors out there have amazing newsletters that they are building their media businesses on the back of. But again, they have that content tilt. So we're going to build audience through your newsletter most likely. And you can have if you have that YouTube connection, if you have that podcast, whatever, you want the call to action to always go to the email if you can. All right, let's talk about revenue. Here's your revenue model, folks. After interviewing hundreds and hundreds of content creators about the different revenue models for the mini media model that we're talking about, this is it. You have 6 direct and 4 indirect. Now, for those of you in business and understand content marketing, the 4 on the side that are completely white, product, services, loyal customers, and better customers. Those are what I would call content marketing goals. So if you are doing content in an organization, right, you want to sell more products with your content, services, you want to keep customers more loyal, you might have a magazine or something, or you want to create better yield, better customers. The ones we're going to focus on are these 6 on the inside. I'm going to give you some examples so you know what I'm talking about. Advertising sponsorship is the lowest hanging fruit. It's the one that you should choose first. It's the one where you have relationships with companies that you trust, that you've been talking to for a long time, that actually subscribe to your newsletter, that subscribe to your content, whatever. So this is the tilt that we have. If you're a subscriber, if you're not a subscriber to the tilt, please subscribe. And if you are, you'll see that in most newsletters, we have a sponsor and they pay us money to be part of that. And you would create a media kit as part of this moving forward. It's very important that this happens. And that's where you're going to start, because it's the easiest, because you can make the sell with people you have relationships already to support what you're doing. By the way, it doesn't have to be a newsletter. Could be on your podcast, could be a YouTube read, could be whatever it is, right? Could be a brand deal on TikTok, whatever the case is. Conferences and events. That's where I've sort of made my home with the Content Inc. model moving forward. Chelsea talked about CEX coming up May 5th through 7th. I believe that the newsletter, build your land on newsletter and then go to an event, is probably the best case study that we've seen for business authors. I've seen it over and over again about business authors that go out. I was just at Social Media Marketing World. Mike Stelzner wrote a book and then did Social Media Examiner, where he's getting emails, and then did the event Social Media Marketing World. It works over and over again. We did that with Content Marketing Institute, and then went into Content Marketing World, which became the engine of growth, revenue, and profit for us moving forward. And then you've got your premium content. And here's where you're giving, as an author, you're looking at the model differently. You call yourself an author, and you can always call yourself an author, and that is a badge of honor. Anybody that writes a book and publishes a book, that's a big deal. But in this model, it's just a premium product. It's another way to get your message out. You don't necessarily have to make money off of that if you desire to. Although with the books that I've done a book every 2 years since 2009. and make money on those books, and it's great, but it's part of the machine that we've built in the Content Inc. model more than anything else, because I know the more that my audience can get my book or listen to my podcast or do whatever, the more that they will come to CEX or come to whatever event that I'm doing, and it works really well in the model. Or maybe it's an affiliate marketing model. Really good example of this is John Lee Dumas, and again, another author out there, creates a podcast called Fire Nation. Millions of people listen to John every week on his podcast, but he derives most of his revenue by giving out product codes. And then when people buy those products, he gets a 30% cut of those. That's what affiliate marketing is. And a lot of people are very successful at that. Or maybe you want to do some kind of a subscription service. Author John Jantz at Duct Tape Marketing. By the way, I started listening to John back. I think I saw him do a speech in 2006, and he was carrying around his duct tape marketing book, and really, really successful. He has a membership subscription program called Fractional CMO and works really well with that and with a cohort and a group of people. So that's how he drives revenue into his book project. Used to be a book project. Now he has Duct Tape Marketing, which is a media company. And then, by the way, a big part of this can still be consulting services. My friend, my colleague and podcaster, co-host on This Old Marketing. So This Old Marketing is a podcast that Robert Rose and I have been doing since 2013. Robert, author, gets most of his revenue through consulting services on his the content advisory site. So that's what you're seeing right now. So you might just decide, hey, a bigger part of my model might still be consulting. That's okay. And Robert still has his hands in the event market and into the advertising market, but the biggest part of his model is this consulting. So before you go and do all this, I mean, hopefully you've thought about this before you write a business book. If it's just a hobby, it's fine, right? You can write whatever you want to, but really what we want to do is make money off of this. We want to build a business. We want to have financial security for our families. We want to be able to do whatever we want to do later in life. So ask yourself, if you do this model, and this is where you want to spend a couple weeks on it before you just go and I'm going to do the newsletter. I'm going to do what Joe said. I really believe in this model. Ask yourself, is there money? If you build an audience, are there sponsors out there that will support you? If you build an audience, will they buy things directly from you? Is there an audience there? That's why when we made the decision to go from just marketing professional to marketing professional at an enterprise company, that was a really important decision because we actually found there was more money, higher dollars at the enterprise level. It's harder to break in that. We had to do a lot of our content differently, but it worked really well because we had more opportunities to sell at that. So I would just ask yourself the simple question before you spend all the time and you say, Joe, I've done your model for 24 months. And then you realize you built an audience, but they can't afford anything or they're not going to buy anything, at least enough to support the model. Okay, now we're into diversification. So you've done the first 5 steps and now you're really getting to you're a media company now. I mean, you're really moving and grooving. You're moving forward. And just to look at a media company that I'm fond of, I subscribe to Morning Brew. So how does it work when you diversify out? So Morning Brew started with just a newsletter, right? Oh, okay, great. We're just a newsletter for 3 years. And then we build up 1 million subscribers and it's great. And then we start all these podcasts and then they have Business Casual and a bunch of other podcasts that they've started and they diversified off of there. And then they diversify more and they create this training program. That's what you end up doing. And if you look at the model for how that's done, once you get to, let's say your email to what we would call a minimum viable audience and, a number that you can sell against, that you can sell sponsorships against, or you can sell products against, then you start diversifying and you basically build a product out every 9 months. I like the 9-month mark. You can't do more than one thing at a time, I would say. Every 9 months you could, and we did that at CMI. We did, okay, we're going to do the magazine, Chief Content Officer. Then 9 months later, we launched the event and then we launched the podcast and we kept launching new products every 9 months. And that gave us about 3 months to sort of figure out what was right. And then in the next year, we knew what we were doing. But that's what you're going to start doing. And I want to say that when you're at this point, and some of you might be at this point right now, and if you're not, I would still be thinking about it because some of these deals are very low. You should think about acquiring somebody else's stuff. So if you have a business book you've already created and you want to build the email newsletter, but somebody has really already built that email newsletter, you might say, hey, maybe that's for sale. By the way, everything's for sale. You just have to ask and figure out. So I'll give you an example of how this worked for CMI. I knew this is in 2013. I knew we weren't going to get to our point of selling for $15 million by 2015 unless I made some acquisitions. We just weren't growing. We were growing fast organically, but not fast enough. And I said, okay, what do we need to diversify and build this thing? And I said, we need an awards program. So we went out and we found Magnum Opus Awards program, went out and built that, or went out and renamed that Content Marketing Awards and then integrated that. And then we said also, we really need a West Coast tech event. There was a lot of detailed content strategy going on in enterprises. We didn't really have a say in that. We felt we should. We felt there was an opportunity there. We went out and bought Intelligent Content Conference from California, renamed it Content Tech, and those two deals added $3 to $4 million in value to the final sale and making that happen. And they didn't cost very much money. They did not. And there's deals that you can work with over, just like if you want to pay for a car over time, you could do that. Don't be scared of it. Don't be scared of it. What I want you to do is make your wish list. So if you see a podcast that you think that maybe you should buy that, or a newsletter, or a YouTube channel, or direct competitors, whatever they are, whatever you think of them, make a list. And then at some point, you're going to want to strike up a relationship with them. Maybe go to an event. Maybe they're going to be at CEX. You can go meet them at CEX and figure out some stuff and do something partnership with them. I mean, it worked really well for me. To be honest, launched Content Entrepreneur Expo a couple years ago. I was saying maybe it's time to sell. Lulu was our best sponsor. Wonderful. Talked with Matt Briel, who's VP of Marketing at Lulu. And Matt was considering, maybe Lulu should do an event. I said, well, maybe Lulu should just buy CEX. And it worked out great. And everybody's happy. But those things don't happen unless you're thinking about them all the time. So I want you to start thinking about them and make your list as you go forward. Here's your last one. And then we're going to get on to questions. I hope you have some questions. We're going to have about 10, 12 minutes to answer those. But here's where you get to the sell and go big here at the end. And again, we're going to begin with the end in mind. What do you want to do to really make this work? It's a 5 to 7 year journey. So if you start with your business book, let's say you have it or you have the thought of it and you're going forward. Whenever you choose to do your base, it's going to take you about 18 to 24 months to build enough of an audience to start monetizing. I've seen it done in less time. John Lee Dumas, the one case study I showed you, he did it in 9 months where he really got to big, solid financial return, 9 to 12 months. Most of us don't have that. And mostly it's 18 to 24 months. Then you really start to turn on that engine and then you get to a little bit of a different point. And here's sort of how it looks. And again, this is all detailed in the book Content Inc., but you can sort of see, first couple months, I'm figuring out my sweet spot, my content tilt. Then I'm building the base. That's 12 months. I'm really starting to build this audience on email. You get to the 18-month mark. Now you're really starting to think about revenue because you can't sell revenue unless you have an audience. You can pre-sell. You could try but then you have to make sure you keep that promise going forward. So you get to that 18 months. And then once that happens, the next 12 months, you're starting to diversify. You've launched 1 or 2 things to diversify and build yourself out as a real content media business. And then you're going to be at this point where you can figure out what you want to do. And that's why I'm asking you, like with Content Marketing Institute, we were at a point in 2015 where I could have said, we're going to go real big with this. We're going to go South by Southwest big. But honestly, we were 28 people at that point, and we didn't want to go. I didn't want to go any bigger. My wife didn't want to go any bigger. We were like, and we set the goal in the beginning to say this, we wanted to sell. That was our goal. So it was easy to make that decision, and we were going to exit that way. So that's why I would think about it now, what you want to do. Do you want to create this big company and do that for the rest of your life? That's great. But maybe you want a 5 to 7 year plan where you can exit and do something like this. And if that's the case, you have something. Because the wonderful thing is what we're talking about is very difficult for a lot of big companies to do because they're all over the place and they're focused on advertising and they're not really focused on the niche audience and building something and having the passion to do it. You do. You have that passion, so you can build it up. And then a bigger company that really would want to do that, but it would take them 3 years to do what you did, might then buy it. And you start keeping that list of people that might ultimately buy you. So as we wrap this thing up, I don't know if you're specific enough with your audience as you need to be. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but you should revisit that question. Are you specific enough? I want you to develop that content mission statement if you already haven't, and really ask yourself, if you did the work like we're talking about, can you be the leading expert in the world on your thing? Can you? Because you might not be able to because you're too broad. Something's too broad. How can you be truly different? I have a wonderful friend of mine that's working on a running podcast, and we're going back and forth with focus and names and whatever. And we've gone over 5-6 times, and it's still, I keep saying, no, if you did all the work, you still couldn't be the leading expert. You still couldn't do it. You'd have to have too many amazing things and luck happen. So set yourself up where you're so different. You're so weird. Lean into your weirdness. That's where we were. And then that's when social really pays off, because people want to follow you because you say some weird stuff. You do some weird things. People want to watch that. They want to subscribe to that. They want to build a relationship with you because of that. And maybe more important, you can't do all the things well. So you have to look at some of these things that you're doing right now. The average company creates and distributes content 13 to 16 different ways. It's probably pretty close for an author or content creator. You're probably on X, you're probably on Insta, you're probably on Facebook, you're probably doing podcasts, you're probably doing webinars, you're probably doing all the things, right? Well, it's mediocre at best, right? You're not doing anything amazingly well. Start saying no to some of those things so you can say a big, fat, emphatic yes to one or two things and be amazing at it. So again, like Chelsea was saying, you can use my personal code JP100. I want to see you at Content Entrepreneur Expo. Go to cex.events, put in that coupon code, get $100 off. I'm so excited. Not just BJ Novak. BJ Novak from The Office is amazing. We got Justin Welsh. We got Latasha James. We have so many amazing speakers. Jay Klaus will be there. But I think more than anything else, and I'll say, yeah, our education is hands down the best of any of the creator events. I'm going to say it right now. But I will also say that the networking is the best. You will come away with relationships that are going to help you build your multi-million-dollar business. And that's why I want to see you there as we go. I hope you got your one thing. If you want to put in the chat what your one thing is and share it with everybody else, that would be fantastic. But I want to make sure we get some time to get it back to Chelsea for some questions. I don't know if we've had any questions come in, Chelsea, but if we did, I would love to answer them. All right, so it's back to the Content Inc. podcast. I hope you enjoyed this special episode about how to create a multi-million-dollar business from your business book. And of course, we went on with this and I answered a ton of different questions, but I want to answer your questions as well. So email me at jp@thetilt.com, jp@thetilt.com, or go to joepolizzi.com, fill out the form. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Let me know how I can help you. I really do want to see you at CEX this year, May 5th to 7th. That'd be the best place for us to get together. But I hope this has been helpful. I always love this presentation and going through it because it works. And I've interviewed hundreds of content entrepreneurs that it's worked for them as well. So I'm a big believer in this model. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next Monday.